Hi, thank you very much for joining us for this short video. On December 21st, Congress passed the Coronavirus Relief Bill, and what we're going to do is similar to like we did with the prior relief bills. Provide short videos, very targeted on specific subject matter, and slowly break this thing apart over time. As we did in the past too, I hope we're able to build a dialogue off of this as we're reviewing the legislation, which 5,000 pages, there's a lot of it. A lot of it doesn't pertain to us, but there's a lot of it. As we're continuing to move forward with this, if you've got questions, please do send them my way to make sure that me and my team are able to dig into it, take a look at it, because if you've got the question, chances are a lot of your colleagues do too. So in today's video, we're going to focus in on the changes to existing PPP loans. Don't worry, I understand that there is an opportunity for a second PPP loan. The very next video is going to be dealing with that one before we get into some of the tax credits. But there were some really significant changes to what I think is a very timely issue, which is what's it going to look like when we pursue forgiveness for our PPP loan, or if we've already received that forgiveness, what does this new legislation actually mean to me too? So I'm going to talk about the tax treatment of forgiven expenses, the additional eligible expenses, and then changes to the forgiveness process. Both the process, new forms are going to be coming out. There's going to be a good amount of kind of just things moving around. But first, to the tax treatment of forgiven expenses. So throughout the year, we've had a very dramatic cycle. We knew from the CARES Act that the PPP loan itself was not going to be subject to regular income tax. Then the IRS came in and said, you're not going to be able to deduct the expenses that you use to receive that forgiveness. That's negating the non-taxability of the PPP loan. Then we saw maybe we apply for forgiveness in the second year and take the deductions in the first year, and the Treasury came out and said you can't do that. Well, thankfully, Congress came back and said, look, whenever you apply for forgiveness, we're going to ensure and legislate that the expenses that you use to receive forgiveness are fully deductible. So as we head into the end of the year and we're looking ready at Q4, your Q4 estimated taxes, as we're looking at how does this year wrap up, that's really great news for all of us. The next piece that I want to make sure that you're aware of, although I'm not encouraging you to necessarily take advantage of it, is we've had an expansion to eligible expenses. This might come into play if we pursue that second PPP loan, and if so, I'll address it in some videos at that time as well. But I want you to be aware of this. To payroll costs, group insurance costs were implicitly included under healthcare benefits. They are now explicitly included. So let's take out any wiggle room there, make sure everybody's on the same page. Have our same with our interest and our rent, have our same in terms of some of the utilities. On the operating costs, we've gone full bore now. So you can have covered operational expenses, which I can dig into that in a future video. Covered property damage. That one's a little bit more nuanced, so I wanted you to be aware that is incurred due to civil unrest and not reimbursed by your insurance. That's what they mean right there. Then covered supplier costs, so that does include dental suppliers. Now, still want us to focus on cash compensation when we pursue our forgiveness for this first round, but that could be pretty beneficial for us in the future if we move forward with the second round, if we qualify to be able to move forward with the second round. And the final is covered workers protection expenditure. That's another one I want to highlight. That's going to be your PPE plus any changes you've made to your facility. Note, that's the exact same bucket that I talked about. If you were comfortable with the reporting standards by the HHS Provider Relief Fund, that's where I wanted you to really target some of those dollars on out the gate, because they're so explicit, they're easy to capture, they're easy to retain. So as this is allowable now as a future PPP related expenditure, I'd be really mindful of the fact that you cannot receive double reimbursement for the same expense with a federal program, with federal, state, local, or insurance programs. The other piece that I want to make sure, even with that expanded list, 60% of your forgiveness amount, first round or second round, do need to go to payroll costs. Then there's been some changes to the actual forgiveness process itself. One structural, outside of our hands and control, but there's a bit of an impact to us from a liability standpoint. The Coronavirus Relief Act made it explicitly clear that banks, lenders are held harmless when it comes to the review of your forgiveness application. Done with the intention of speeding up the process to get documents to SBA, to get SBA to approve the forgiveness amount. But keep in mind, if they're held harmless, then the borrower is going to hold the liability for the application. Second, it's going to diminish their review time, like I mentioned previously, all with the goal of expediting the forgiveness process. We also now have the ability to choose our own covered period. That was actually contained in the guidance of the EZ forgiveness form, that once you had expended your dollars, you could pursue forgiveness even if you weren't at the end of your covered period. But that guidance was not included in the original forgiveness application, nor the S version, the one-pager version of the application. To have this codified is great. You're able to choose any time after 8 weeks up to greater than 8 weeks, less than 24 weeks. Again, might be more pertinent for a second round, as I know a lot of us are past our covered period. Now, one that is just fantastic and kind of came out of nowhere as far as I'm concerned is the repeal of the idle advance reduction. So people who have moved forward with their forgiveness know anything that we got in that idle advance, right? The stimulus formerly known as the idle grant, and this is separate and aside from the idle loan, but that advance, that grant, well, now we can call it a grant again. Our forgiveness is not going to be reduced by the idle advance amount that we received. If you've already received forgiveness, do not worry. This is fully retroactive. Treasury has 11 days to be able to come out, or 15 days to be able to come out and tell us how it is they plan on handling that. But even with that misspeak, between 11 days and 15 days, are they going to do it in 15 days? I don't know. This is the same group that was given 3 days to get the idle advance out the door, and we first started seeing that hit accounts 3 weeks after it was applied for. So would not hold them necessarily to the time frame, but if you already received forgiveness, you will be reconciled retrospectively. And as you move forward, if you were thinking about applying for forgiveness here on your holiday break, I'd recommend you wait. Make sure that that process has now been fully implemented so that you can take advantage of it and not get caught up trying to find where that extra $5,000 to $10,000 might be in terms of your forgivable amount. Now, the new one that I also did not expect, and it's that middle ground between, do they forgive everything $150,000 and under, or do we continue to kind of make some changes there to keep that as easy as possible? What they've decided to do is there's going to be a short form forgiveness application for loans of $150,000 and under. I imagine that this is going to mirror the 3508S form that's out there. I've got another video that talks about the 3 PPP forgiveness application forms. You'll be able to dig into the S form if you want to watch that video. And so I imagine there's going to be a lot of similar elements because there's kind of two pieces that really align. One is it's got to be a one-page form. Second, you've got to attest for all terms and conditions, and you've got to account for your employees. You'll find that's already inherently right there in that 3508S form. Now, the additional language that's in this, not CARES Act, Coronavirus Relief Act, states that there needs to be an estimate of the amount of the loan that was spent on payroll costs. I'm not sure how that's going to look when we see that form. We'll unpack that and make sure that you've got some good guidance there. One of the major reasons why I dislike the 3508S, that one pager that looks really simple, is because you don't have the exemption that you do with the EZ form, where you only had to submit and retain documentation related to the expenses you were pursuing forgiveness on. You take $50,000 and under, you do this one pager, well then you got to be retaining all documentation related to what possibly could be forgiven, whereas so many of us were able to get full forgiveness using cash compensation only. Utilizing the EZ form and focusing in on cash compensation allowed us really just to focus on how it was we were going to retain our payroll files, because we were told we had to retain them for 6 years. Well, under the subsection of this act, they identify that the retention now is 4 years for payroll costs and 3 years for all other expenses. Those pretty much align with what your accountant is already going to have you do, and what we don't advise as well, in terms of just proper document retention. That makes me a little bit more optimistic that this is truly going to be a nice, easy one and done on a one-pager. Again, if you've already pursued forgiveness under the EZ form, well, you probably have less documents to have to worry about. You've got the comfort as we head into the end of the year of having your loan forgiven. And so these are concerns for the future. None of this I'd be kind of kicking myself in terms of missing. Everything's retroactive, or it's enough of a minor change that it's not really going to change the operations of it as well. So like I said, we're going to hit the second loan next. A lot more in the act to uncover and unpack for you. Want to keep the videos short, want to keep them targeted, so we'll drip that out to you guys over a period of time. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions over what we covered today, or if you have any kind of questions about what you're hearing out there in terms of how does this compare to the actual words in the act itself, let me know. We'll dig that out and we'll be able to take a look at it. So aside from that, just thank you very much for your time. Please move forward along this video if there's somebody who you think it might be helpful to. And also, happy holidays. Thank you.